Hello there everyone, this is Jed Schlafman, and in this video I'm going to be speaking about different ways in which we tend to harm or hurt ourselves. And this includes both psychological and physical forms of self-harm. These are not presented here in a particular order, so it's not implied that the first one that I mentioned or the last one that I mentioned is any more or less significant than any of the others. These are just a variety of ways that we're doing things that in some way inhibit our health or well-being and our potential as human beings. The first form of self-harm is what I'm going to refer to as self-condemnation and self-criticism. This is when we carry guilt and shame and we hold on to judgments against ourselves. And in that manner, we end up harming ourselves. It's natural and useful to evaluate our actions and experiences in order to pursue self-improvement. Yet when we're belittling or condemning ourselves for whatever we have done, which is actually what our past self has done, not our present identity, then that only constricts our energy and it kind of attaches us like a cord to the past. So if we can learn to be more self-accepting, self-forgiving, then we're going to support our own well-being, our own connection to the source of life. The next way that we harm ourselves focuses more on the physical level, and this is overeating. Eating too much, especially of processed, overly fatty, overly sugary, overly salty types of foods. Foods that are actually kind of addictive. This steadily stresses and breaks down our body. So if we're overeating, we're putting too much stress on our body and things tend to get bogged down. Our body builds up excessive amounts of toxic residues. Our organs will tend to no longer function as efficiently. So in that way, when we're consuming too much food or too much of the heavy, dense, processed types of foods, then we're actually causing harm to ourselves rather than just nourishing ourselves with food. The next form of self-harm is inadequate sleep. When we're sleeping, our body is able to refresh, to detoxify, to regenerate. And if we're not getting enough sleep or rest, then our health will tend to decline and our body will tend to age more rapidly. There are many people who think that they're getting adequate sleep, but in actuality they've just become accustomed or adapted to getting less than optimal sleep, so they don't notice the harmful effect that the lack of sleep is having. For most of us, the optimal amount of sleep would tend to be around 8 to 9 hours. Of course, if you're a growing child, you would need more sleep. So be aware of your sleep patterns, and if you're really waking up feeling refreshed and rejuvenated or not. If you're not, then perhaps you're not getting enough sleep or you're not getting deep enough sleep. Another form of self-harm involves substance abuse and substance addictions. Drugs, and this could be recreational drugs as well as pharmaceutical drugs, especially the psychotropic pharmaceuticals, Those will put stress on our bodies and disturb our cognitive processes, often impairing our judgment and causing our lives to spin out of control as we become consumed with the addiction. There are also what are called process addictions. This would be addictions such as addiction to shopping, gambling, computer games, television, sex, social media, and so on. So those are behaviors that people engage in an addictive pattern, which also stress our biochemical systems and foster imbalanced thinking. So when any type of addiction starts to take over your life, your thought processes will in some way be affected because you'll be catering to that addiction and your life will become out of balance in some way. Another way that many people will tend to harm or injure themselves in some manner is through excessively sacrificing oneself to serve an external person, group, or organization. When we're part of a family, a club, a company, some organization, or some type of community, we will often be placing the interests of those social units ahead of our own personal interests or needs. In some cases, that may be temporarily useful or sensible. So we're not saying that we don't want to ever engage in any form of self-sacrifice. However, we often go to an extreme and cause significant harm to our own health or well-being out of our desire to assist what we perceive as a greater good or to be accepted by those around us. Ultimately, if we deplete our own energy too much or damage our own health, at some point we won't be able to help others because we'll be too depleted or decimated ourselves and not having the energy or availability, therefore, to be of service to others. So we need to have our own health and energy in order to adequately serve others. There needs to be a healthy balance there. Moving on to another way in which many people tend to impair or harm themselves is disbelieving in our own personal power and potential. If we think of ourselves in a negative and limiting way, then we're, in a sense, psychologically crippling ourselves. For example, if you think of yourself as unintelligent, unattractive, unpopular, incapable, then you would tend to act in accordance with your own beliefs and keep yourself from pursuing your dreams or achieving things. Remember that most of the beliefs we have are really very subjective. They don't represent an objective truth. So if we could start to shift our beliefs into more self-empowering, self-elevating types of beliefs, then we would follow through with actions that would tend to turn those beliefs into a reality and which would enable us to have a more enriching or fulfilling life experience. Another way in which we tend to disable or harm ourselves is by ignoring the body's needs for physical exercise and movement. Our bodies need some exercise and movement in order to promote healthy energy flow and circulation of blood and the lymphatic activity. So to have our body efficiently nourish itself and clear out toxic waste or residues, it's important to have some regular movement or exercise. With exercise, we actually can engage in too little or too much. Too much exercise could place excessive stress on the body that would lead to energy depletion and biochemical imbalances. So when you exercise a lot, you're using up your fluids and electrolytes. That's an example of how it affects us biochemically. Depending upon your age and your state of physical health and your energetic vitality, the amount of exercise that is healthy or optimal would vary. So be aware of your own body's state, its own needs, and address that accordingly. Another way that we could be impairing or harming ourselves is when we're acting out of integrity with our own values and ethics. So when we're not being in integrity with ourselves. When we have beliefs and values but we fail to adhere to them, in a sense we're in conflict with ourselves. This fosters some fragmentation or compartmentalization of our own consciousness. We might hide from ourselves or deny our own behaviors in order to maintain the ego's desired sense of self, but in doing so that involves suppressing awareness of aspects of ourself and creates a lack of wholeness. Another way that we could be harming ourselves is physiologically with the chemicals on our bodies or in our environment. Our modern society has developed thousands of products with chemicals that are not safe for our bodies and which place some toxic stress upon our physiology. Some of those end up in our food supply, our water, while others are absorbed through the skin, such as from personal care products, or inhaled via the air. Adding synthetic chemicals or smoke to the air, whether or not the scent is pleasant to you, tends to congest and irritate the respiratory system. Chemicals in makeup and toothpaste, antiperspirants, hair coloring, perfumes, lotions, and other common products that people may use on a regular basis have been found to foster allergies, endocrine disturbances, cancer, and other health concerns. We are each responsible for what we choose to place in or on our bodies, which means we do need to read labels and educate ourselves about any potential hazards. While there are environmental assaults that are going on in the world around us, which can impact us and which we may have little or no control over, such as chemicals sprayed in the atmosphere, nuclear radiation, water pollution, and so on, it doesn't really accomplish much to complain about those phenomena if we're at the same time neglecting to address the toxic exposures that we do have personal power or control over. And now for another way that we might harm or impair ourselves, number 10 on this list, is directly causing pain or injury to the physical body, such as cutting, bruising, or burning oneself. People who engage in those self-harm behaviors are often doing so as an unconscious way to relieve or express psychological distress. There are often issues involving the personality and the dysfunctional familial and social systems that the person has experienced. These are likely being expressed through those forms of self-injury. These individuals may have been abused, neglected, or mistreated, or at least subjectively perceived their experience in that manner, and have difficulty confronting or expressing things, so they act out the stress and or frustration upon their own bodies. This can create a desired sensation and or a means of drawing attention to oneself. this is a form of psychological expression. So even though the person appears to be injuring or harming themselves, their unconscious intention is actually to serve some purpose that would, from that point of view, be benefiting or helping oneself, either helping express something or helping get attention that the person wasn't able to get in some more conventional ways. So we don't want to attack that person and be judgmental toward them for what they're doing. We want to help them access the unconscious roots of what's going on with their consciousness. I hope that this discussion of different ways that people may harm themselves has given you some insight, not only into yourself, but into other people that you may interact with. The reality is that all of us, in different ways, are doing some things that could be considered harmful to ourselves. And when we're doing those things, we're often very unconscious of it. We're not really thinking about what we're doing. We're not really aware. In order to make positive changes in our lives, it is critical or important to be aware of our existing patterns. So as we become more aware, as we move past any ignorance or denial that we may have previously had, then we're able to take constructive steps to make changes in our lives. So I hope that this presentation has helped bring about or expand your awareness and will help enable you to make positive shifts and changes in your life to help improve your health and well-being, to help you live a more enriching or fulfilling life. For those that are interested in self-improvement and holistic health and spirituality, I invite you to watch more of my YouTube videos, and you could also visit my website, which has additional resources, www.phinsights.com. That's PHINSIGHTS.com. For now, I would like to wish each of you a wonderful day. Namaste.